in this series of 6 lectures around this topic. I will share with you that he's put together an incredible book before the lecture series. And so I highly recommend his book, Acupuncture for Treating the Hidden Roots of Diseases. It is a fantastic book, and it is a thick book, as in full of lots of clinical pearls. And people say, if you want to be excellent, which one should I do, right? If I really want to treat this stuff well, it's a simple answer, both. You want to have the book and you really want to do the courses if you really want to go in deep to this material. And Hamid is a prolific writer. He has many books available in print on Chinese medicine. He is both medical trained, he's a physician, and he's Chinese medicine trained. He is integration, which is also a pleasure to have Hamid teaching this material, where he can really integrate and bring the material together. You will see, though, I think from my experience listening to Hamid's lectures, he has become more Chinese medicine in my mind. He doesn't, if I didn't know he was a Western doctor, I wouldn't know, because he talks about the classics and he is giving the medicine great service. He goes deep into the medicine. He has a very strong understanding, and you can tell clinical experience. This is the 6th lecture of a series of 6. They can be done a la carte. You can just pick and choose, or you can do all 6. They fit really nicely together. So go to his bio page on Healthy Seminars, and you'll see he has the mind and psyche in Chinese medicine, psyche and emotions, constitution. I'm just listing some of the portions of the title names. And again, just a great series of lectures by Hamid, and we feel privileged to have that. I just want to remind you of our disclaimer, and then I'll pass the microphone over to Hamid, reminding you guys for the live webinar, please post your questions, by the way, in the chat, and we will moderate those during the Q&A on your behalf to Hamid. So as questions come up, please put them in the chat. And again, after each break, if you're watching this as a live webinar, say hi, hello, for attendance purposes. Our disclaimer, please read this. I'll also let you know what it says. It says that this lecture is for educational purposes only. This lecture is not intended to be medical advice, so should not be interpreted as medical advice. It is for educational purposes only. If you have a health condition, please seek out a qualified healthcare provider. All right, Hamid, I'm going to have you get ready to start to teach. Let's bring up his PowerPoint. If you guys have tech questions during the live webinar, please post that in the chat room. If you are watching this on demand and you need support, please send us a ticket through the help desk. We're here to support you and enjoy this content, this material. It's been fantastic so far, and I'm sure, like all of you, I personally am excited to hear what Hamid has to share today. Hamid, we just got to unmute you. Hamid, you're still muted though right now, just so you know, okay?
Okay, am I on? Thank you, Lauren. So before we start, maybe in regards to the book you mentioned, the Acupuncture for Treating the Hidden Roots of Disease. This was an idea that my wife Solange and I had in 2019 to start maybe putting together some of the experiences we have had during the years that we have been teaching, and also gathered information and experience from various therapy groups and retreats, etc. And it was a challenge because a lot of this work Solange has been doing in workshops, and the idea of actually putting them into writing and transmitting them was a challenge. And so we sort of managed, and then COVID happened, and with the confinement, this was an opportunity to finish the book. So I always say that was one of the positive aspects of COVID-19. So we managed to put together and finish the book. In this section, which is the last of the series, I'll be covering body memories. Now, all along, I have used the Chinese medicine structure to explain a lot of what we call psychosomatic relations that exists between obviously the mind and the body, and especially how the mind and the psyche is structured. It's important to understand that what we refer to as the conscious aspect of the mind only represents a minute part of the mind. It's about 1/10. And the 9/10 of it is hidden. It's in the form of subconscious and unconscious. And many parts of these unconscious aspects are either we have explored them previously, are transmitted congenitally, or they have been acquired through life experiences or traumas. And last lecture, we looked at the psychological traumas and the impact and imprint they have on our psychological profile. And today we will be exploring what we refer to as body memories and the memories which are retained in the body. Now, basically, it's important first to define what is trauma. Basically, it's a sort of an external input that goes beyond the individual's ability to integrate. Now, obviously, this evokes sort of a personal level. That means that a traumatic event is not experienced as a traumatic event by two people in the same manner. So obviously, this has a lot to do with how we can adapt and how we can take in. Something which goes beyond the information that we can handle is going to be considered as a menace, as a threat to our integrity, and therefore it's the sort of what we call the animal brain or the reptilian brain is going to react to that. And this is the survival instinct, it's the fight or flight instinct, etc. These are our basic physiological processes which are going to be sort of put into place for saving us. Now, as mentioned, the individual reactions very much depend on the strength of the basic constitutional strength, which in Chinese medicine we refer to as the Jing. The strength of the Jing will define, obviously, how we respond. The weaker the Jing, we know people become more fearful, easily feeling overwhelmed, etc. Traumatic experience is not just in the form of maybe a threat to or a sort of a pain or a accident. It can also be psychological. That means a situation, psychological situation that the person cannot handle. Or it can also be extreme sensory input in the form of extreme light, sound. Sound could be a major traumatic event, or physical sensations, etc. Coming back to light and sound trauma, today, for example, now they are discovering that one of the major causes for a lot of physical conditions, maybe even stress, insomnia, etc., are actually sound and light trauma, which is even subliminal because we are not aware of being submitted to a constant level of sound. I know in Switzerland, they put some sound detectors in residential parts of the city, and they found that a higher decibel than is tolerable for a person who's resting. And interestingly, over years that they investigated the sound, the effects of sound trauma, they found, for example, something very strange that, of course, Western medicine cannot explain, an increase in diabetes in relation to sound, chronic sound trauma. Now, of course, Western medicine doesn't have an explanation, although we know in Chinese medicine, sound will affect the kidney, and the root of diabetes, obviously, is a kidney yin deficiency, which is well known. Now, this is a small example. Also for light trauma, we know that that is one of the main causes of stress, chronic stress, and of course, insomnia. So passing just a reminder of what is a traumatic event. And now we have to explore what our defensive mechanisms. Energetically, we basically, what are the structures that we dispose of to deal with these external traumatic events? Now, the first and foremost energetic structures, which are superficial, are the sinew channels. They are basically very rich in Wei Qi. And we have explored this in the lecture on sleep. We know that Wei Qi emerges, comes out to the surface of the body during the day, and it circulates on the surface 25 times. And then it penetrates at night to circulate inside the zangfu 25 times. Of course, these numbers are symbolic, so that Wei Qi is circulating in the day and night 50 times to demonstrate that it circulates 50 times faster than nourishing energy, which takes 24 hours to go through the channel system. This is a symbolic representation, but otherwise what is important to understand is that Wei Qi is rich on the surface during the day, and it withdraws inwards during the night. This withdrawal of Wei Qi also sets into motion the sleep mechanism. The body temperature drops when the Wei Qi goes in, as it's one of the attributes of Wei Qi is to maintain surface body temperature. So it withdraws in, the surface body temperature drops, and this drop at the same time is going to also induce the sleeping process. But the sinew channels are going to be the topic of this discussion today, because besides having a lot of Wei Qi, they are also managing the sinews, the muscles. And therefore, we will see that there is an intimate relation between the surface muscles, the Wei Qi, and of course, this being the most superficial defensive mechanism. The Wei Qi is very reflexive. It has to be. It responds very quickly to an area which is being aggressed by moving the Wei Qi to that particular area. This is very clearly seen, for example, in people who practice martial arts. They train their body to direct the Wei Qi to specific areas of the body. You probably have seen in films, the martial black belt karate they will break bricks with the edge of their hand. Now, if you take a brick and hit the edge of the hand, the brick is much stronger than the muscle tissues and the bones, and it will break that part of the body. But whereas with the person who's practicing martial arts concentrates a lot of Wei Qi in this edge of the hand, which allows him to overcome the brick or the whatever piece of wood that he's breaking. So this is an example that is practiced also in the type of Qigong, which is called Iron Shirt Qigong, is actually bringing and training the body to concentrate a lot of Wei Qi on the surface. The second layer of protection are the luo. And the luo are connected with the vascular system. And the luo are connecting vessels, connecting us to the outer world, besides also having the capacity to connect sort of two coupled channels, and obviously on the surface to connect indirectly two organs, which are the zangfu organs. But what interests us in this concept of protection are what we refer to as the longitudinal laws, the laws which are more superficial, and they are the ones that are connecting the human to the outer world, and therefore the human responses to the outer world in the form of emotions. We have talked about this in the chapter on emotional management and the emotions. Basically, emotions are internal, but it's a response to external events. So each person will have their own particular way of responding to the outside, and this type of emotion will be actually retained by the law when it's not totally expressed or when it's retained, and the law will hold it in the blood vessels. So there's going to be a congestion here of blood vessels, sort of attempting to hold a particular emotion, or again, an external pathogenic factor that has gone through the protective, superficial protective layer of the sinew channels, and the law will be the second level of protection. Then we have the deeper levels, which are represented by the divergent channels, the Jingbei, and the extraordinary vessels. And they are going to be sort of the last protection before a pathogen can penetrate deeper and go into the zangfu and harm the organs. And in this manner, they will be using the divergent channels, the sort of areas which are very rich in Jing. And these are, for example, bones or especially joints where there's a lot of Jing to retain a pathogen. But also we'll see that concerning psycho-emotional traumatic events, basically the extraordinary vessels will play a very important role. The texts say that they act as reservoirs, as ditches that are going to take the overflow when there's a flooding of the river. The ditches which are along the river are going to take this overflow to protect the houses or the cultures. Now, basically, in the sort of the traumatic events we'll be looking at are going to be either psychological or physical. And normally, when they are retained by Hun or by Po, they are not digested. And we saw already last time the psychological traumatic events which are retained by Hun. And when these traumatic events are retained and not digested, they might manifest in certain situations. We will be looking and talking about examples of this, how they manifest. They will manifest themselves without any relation to the context of the moment. That means that somebody might just simply start manifesting a emotional reaction, having an emotional reaction to something which is not even harmful at the time. And these Chinese have referred to them as ghosts, gui, which means that it's an energy mass. When touched, it reactivates and it represents itself. Sorry. It represents itself as some kind of a psychological manifestation. So basically, also doesn't have to be an extreme emotional trauma. It can be chronic and repeated traumatic events, which also may form what we are going to refer to as body armors. And these physical reactions are going to be retained by Po, the sort of corporeal soul. And we will talk more about this in a moment. Now, to see visually how this is functioning, we can see that the